Hi, my name is Tammy,
And I'm Jen.
and they call us Woo.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm super excited. Today we're going to be talking about the topic of cord cutting and energy vampires. This is a topic that's come up a lot with clients and friends and family, um, seeing different relationships in their lives passing through and the way that their body responds and the way that their body feels after they start to shift out of relationships or come into relationships. And from my experience, a lot of it does have to do with the cords that we throw to other people. So today we're going to talk about that, and I am excited.
Yes. I think first off, just describing to people like what these chords are, just like a base level understanding of it might be helpful.
Certainly, of course. So every person that we interact with, we're interacting with the energies that are flowing between us. It's almost like when you're a baby, you have this umbilical cord where you're getting these nutrients and this energy substances that are flowing to feed the baby.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially the same thing, only with energy. So instead of having a physical umbilical cord, we now have energetic umbilical cords that are connecting us to other people. So every person that you interact with, you're throwing this energetic cord to them. You're connected to this other person, and it's a way to feed each other energy back and forth. Unfortunately, what happens sometimes is if you're in dysfunctional relationships or traumas happen and different fights happen between people, you start passing energy that's not necessarily for your highest good. Sometimes you even get people who are drawing energy through a cord but not giving any energy back.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, when there's toxicity within that energetic system, you cut it off so that you can release that energy so that you're not getting sucked dry. And
So
that's
it's
that's
a give and take. It's not a one-way
yes.
thing. And I did
Yes.
get a crazy mental image when you were talking about chords connecting to
Sweet.
all these people. It was a little scary, but that's okay.
Okay, now you have to share this image.
It's
Like I want to know
I don't
it.
know. It's just like a horror movie thing of a person with like all of these like cords coming out of their belly and attaching to all these other people. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was
No,
weird, but
well, that's kind of like what it is. So when I do some of the energy work that I do with people, like I can see some of the cords that are coming off of people. And if they're cords that they've had for a long time that are not necessarily the greatest energies going back and forth, sometimes they get like really twisty and wound up. It's like twisted oak. If you've ever
mm,
seen oak that's been twisted, or when you're in like Sedona, the twisted trees that you see in some of the mountains, um, like in the vortex, that's what some of the cords look like. They're so like intertwined and wound around each other in these ways where it's hard to remove them because they're so intertwined with things.
so in other language, it sounds like you're describing basically like unhealthy relationship patterns and like codependency. A lot of
Yeah,
times is probably what that comes out to be.
yeah,
So can
exactly.
those are those cords generally connected to other people within the physical realm, or they be connected to people who have passed on, stuff like
Yes,
that?
they can. Yeah, they
Okay.
certainly can. So if you have not taken care of the cords when somebody is here, a lot of the time you'll continue to feed energy through that cord. Or it can just be like energy loss. Like it's almost like an open wound sometimes. If there is a cutting off of the cord, but it's not properly cared for, energetically sealed, patched off. So it's kind of like you just snip it off and it's just seeping, like it's not
Just spewing
actually
out energy,
just
kind of.
spewing out
Okay.
energy. I know these are very visual things,
I mean,
but
it's creating
that's what
more
it is.
interesting mental images for sure.
Yes, we should have somebody do some artwork on this and then we could post that. But it is like sometimes that cord can get cut off, but you're still releasing that energy through. You're still giving that energy away.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if you have an attachment to a specific person and that person has cut off ties, you're still giving that energy away through that cord. if you haven't released the
Okay.
cord.
So
Um,
are chords always used in the context of like something that needs to be fixed or like negative, or do you have chords that are like healthy and
oh, yeah,
positive with
yeah.
people? Okay.
Yeah. So every person that you interact with, whether it's your spouse, your significant other, or somebody that you just bump into on the street, like you're throwing an energetic cord to them. It's the energetic pathway that you're sharing information with people.
Hmm.
So, like you said at the beginning, it's a give and take. It's just when they get to be more give than receive, that they become unhealthy, or depending on the energy that you're giving, they can become unhealthy. So my
Can you
own
repair
personal,
them? I'm sorry, go
oh
ahead.
no, ask a
I was just
question.
going to say, can you repair them without cutting them? I mean, is it something that can be, like, say it was a relationship with a spouse or something where you
Mhm.
might not necessarily be like, all right, this is cut off. Not
Yeah.
saying that you would end the relationship, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
Where you figure out how to balance it back out versus like saying, okay, we need to cut this cord.
Yeah. So cord cutting sounds much more much more dramatic than it is. So I have a personal practice of cutting the cords on a regular basis. So
Okay.
it's not that once you cut a cord off, like, so for my fiance, like, regardless of if we're having healthy conversation, if we've been fighting, whatever, on a regular basis, I go through and I cut those cords because I want to make sure that I'm always sending like loving energy, healing energy through those cords. So once you have a cord, you can cut that cord, heal wherever it was attached. You can throw a new cord. Like you're
Okay.
always throwing new cords. So
Okay.
it's just a way of like refreshing the connections that you have with people.
That makes
Of
sense.
course, you can do healing work on a cord if you wanted to. Um, like setting boundaries is actually helping with the cords that you're throwing.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people have very unhealthy boundaries with the people around them. Like
Yeah.
we all have somebody that we have an unhealthy boundary with,
Mm-hmm.
as far as I'm concerned. I have not met anybody who does not have at least one unhealthy boundary with
Yes.
somebody.
Yes.
But so if you have healthy boundaries with people and the relationship and how much energy you're giving and setting like a standard of you should be receiving. I hate to use the word should, but like if you are giving and receiving equally, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's exactly in and out. It could be like at some point you're giving, at another point you're receiving,
Mm-hmm.
because there's ebbs and flows in that. But it's making sure that you are aware that there is an equal give and receive
Okay.
in these cords. And so that boundary work is huge in keeping a healthy cord between other people. Um, and like I said, unfortunately, in the metaphysical field, in the energetics field, a lot of people talk about cords, and when they do talk about cords, it's like, oh, you need to cut the cords because all of these unhealthy things are happening. But we're not addressing the fact that cords are there for a reason. They're there to facilitate healthful connection.
Okay.
Yeah, it can actually be a really beautiful thing when you do see healthy cords, because there's a lot of the time that you're seeing this beautiful energy just flowing back and forth. It's kind of like waves going in and out. It's the same with the energy that's going through these cords. It's like you're giving this energy to assist another being, and they're giving it back to you. And so it's just this back and forth ebb and flow, in a healthy corded connection.
Okay. That makes sense. So when you do your healing work, do you like how do these chords become apparent? Do you see them? Do you sense them? I mean, I know firsthand some of the work that you've done, but obviously it's something that you do practice when you're working with people.
Yeah, so for me it could be different for other people. For me, I can physically see the cords at times. Other times when I'm doing any body work or doing energy work, I sense them or feel them. There's shifts and changes within their energy field. I can feel how do I even want to put this? It's almost like there's these ropes coming off of their energy field. So I can feel the energy of like an actual rope-like structure coming from people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, that could be different from person to person. Some people might see them, some people might feel them, some people might just know that they're there. Um, for me, I'm a very visual person. Like I see what's going on inside the body. I see what's actually happening within the energy field. Um, so when I start working with somebody on that, I'm getting a visual image, probably much like the image that you had, even though not quite horror like.
It
Um,
wasn't gory.
but it wasn't gory. Um, but then I can help people facilitate cutting those cords and actually sealing them up. Um, so when you cut a cord off, it's like it's like if you were to amputate something and then they cauterize it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time you're doing the same thing with the cords. You're like essentially energetically cauterizing, healing that spot where that cord was, so that they're back to a healthy starting point again.
So what does that look like? Like
Um,
healing,
mhm.
cauterizing, whatever.
um, like the process of actually cutting it and stuff,
Yeah,
or
like what would
like
be the
what do I
difference? Like
see in
how
my
would
brain?
people know the difference between just cutting a cord? So say they figured out that they have some unhealthy relationship, so they were trying to cut this cord themselves and or unhealthy dynamic, whatever you want to say. How do you heal that? How would they know the difference?
Yeah. So I have people do a visualization practice while they are doing it. So I use different tools like selenite or kyanite, which are two different minerals. Um, I have some selenite behind me. Of course I do. So this is selenite. Um, it's very white on the screen. But so sometimes I'll use a selenite wand. I can't believe I don't have my kyanite behind me, but sometimes I'll use kyanite too. They're really good for cutting cords,
Okay.
because they energetically, they're good for clearing. Kyanite is specifically good for cutting cords and like low vibrational energy, it cuts through it. So I'll have people take one of those, or they can visualize their hand as like a saw or a samurai sword, like whatever's going to cut through the crab. Like I want them to visualize that. They'll go through and wherever they feel or wherever they sense that there is discomfort in their body, we're just going to go through and we're going to visualize cutting through those cords. So like a lot of people who've been through breakups or they've had a lot of heartache or loss, grief, things like that, they'll need a lot of work around the heart or the high heart. Um, so they can just go through and like cut any cords, attachment cords with the person that they've broken up with, or the relationship that has ended, or the relationship that has trauma. Um, and they just visualize those cords. You can think about the person, or you can just tell your higher self, we're going to cut any cords that are no longer serving me. Go through and cut those. And then once you've cut them, you send an intentional message to your body. Okay, we're going to seal off all of these areas where I had a cord attached. You can use your selenite or your kyanite or whatever stone you want to seal that up. But you can also just be intentional. Like setting intentions is huge when it comes to energetics. If you are very clear on the goal that you want, your body follows suit. Energetically, your soul follows suit. Like
So
you
it's
say what you
a
want.
lot of it is how clear you are. So it's
Yes.
really a practice in being honest.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
And so, like, it's different when you're working on yourself than when you're working on somebody else. When I'm working on somebody, I'm actually seeing where we cut the cords. Like, it looks like an open wound to me. It looks
Mm.
like you just cut down, like, you cut the tentacles off of an octopus. Like, it will be an open wound. And then I'll go over and I'll do Reiki energy or I'll do some shamanic healing work and hold space for healing in that. And a lot of the time, I set the intention that once we close that off, that cord is not going to be rethrown unless the person is intentionally throwing that cord again.
Okay.
That way, we're not bringing in the opportunity for someone to throw the cord back to them and start drawing that energy again.
Okay.
Because if you don't heal those cords and you don't set the intention that those cords are being healed, it's very easy for your body to just be like, oh, yeah, that cord, it's just going to grow back.
Well, sure.
You're like
It's,
a
you know,
lizard
in
who's
more
growing
this,
extra limbs.
yeah. And in like
Yeah.
psychological terms, you know, it's trauma patterns, it's behavior
Yeah.
patterns, it's the
Yep.
things that maybe aren't good for us but are comfortable because that's what we're used
Yes.
to.
Yeah.
Which that totally makes sense in both of those terms.
Mm-hmm.
Which I know we had talked a little bit about this idea of energy vampires too, which sounds like, you know, what you were describing is someone who's continually trying to connect with you, and it's a very take relationship and not a give
Yep.
relationship.
Yeah. Yes.
So I don't know if you want to segue into the energy vampire part of it, or I mean, the cord part is fascinating too. So
Certainly, I can. So energy vampires are, this is another one of those things that it gets played out as energy vampires are these horrible people that are just coming in and taking all your energy. And it's actually a lot of the time not as malicious as people think it is. A lot of
yes,
people don't recognize that they're an energy vampire. They're not intentionally going in and taking everybody's energy. Yes, there are those people. There are those people, believe me. But a lot of the time, people have been so hurt in the past, or they didn't have their needs met. They weren't receiving the energy that they needed a lot of the time as a child. Like if somebody was neglected, or they had a relationship that was an abusive relationship or a neglectful relationship, it's a lot of people who have been in the role of victim when it comes to what they're receiving. Like a lot of the time, they were on the receiving end of a lot of negative things. So they never received what they were craving. And so they started getting it wherever they could. So we've probably all met people who were just very, very clingy and just really wanted to be like center of our attention, like in friendships or in relationships. It's like, I need you to be by me. I need to be with you all the time. I need to be talking to you. A lot of the time, that is somebody who is drawing energy. They're receiving that energy from the person that they're connecting with. They're drawing a lot of energy through that cord that they're not necessarily giving back. And a lot of the time, it's coming from that space of they've been so depleted, or they don't know how to hold their own energy. Like sometimes it's people who will go out and they volunteer all the time. They give all of their energy away because they don't understand that energy is cyclical and that we receive energy from the earth, from the divine. We receive energy and we don't need to give our energy away. So then they try to get it wherever they can, and they feel like they need to draw it from somebody else. So a lot of the time, energy vampires aren't like legit going out there like sucking people's energy, like biting into them and like sucking it in. It's just like, oh, I need to replenish myself, and this person's willing to give it to me. Like they find the person who's willing to just share their energy. Doesn't, for
yes,
whatever reason, they don't know how to set boundaries or they don't know how to block that energy. Um, and so they just get it where they can.
yeah. That the way you describe it is really similar to how I describe it to people too. Sometimes it's the people that you, even if they're not in the room with you, sometimes just the thought of them can exhaust you.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a good chance that it's, you know, more of an energy vampire type relationship. But I explain the same thing where it's like they may or may not know that they're doing this.
Yep.
And like you said, a lot of people do come from trauma backgrounds where they have not learned how to take care of themselves
Yeah.
or kind of give themselves what they need. So it's like they're walking around with this big hole and trying to grab everybody else's energy to fill up
Hmm.
this space that is never going to be filled with other people's energy. It's just endless, massive. And
Yeah.
until they figure it out, they're going to just keep doing that because they don't know
Exactly.
any other way to do it. And it's kind of interesting the way you put it too about the people, looking at it in the terms of even people who help a lot. And I remember, well, a couple things. I remember in massage school, that's when I really opened my mind to a lot more of this energy practices. And it was pretty profound for me when I learned about personal energy versus universal energy, and
Yep.
how when you are doing any form of healing work, but also can be applied to other things in life, that your energy is yours. You don't have to give it to anybody.
True.
And you can heal with the use of like all of the energy that's around you and stuff like that. And it sounds so simple, but my mind was blown because the background in the childhood I came from, and not to say that I had like a terrifying childhood. We certainly had, some not great things, some alcoholism and stuff like that in my family. But I will say I have very loving parents also, and, a supportive family. So I can't say that my, life was just full of horror and abuse or anything like that. But there is something to be said about being in that situation where you feel the need to always be a provider of energy for other people,
Yeah.
and they don't necessarily, so parents can even do that accidentally sometimes, right? Like they don't think they're doing it,
True.
or in the form of sometimes you see the parents who are like so invested in what their kids are doing because it's making them feel better about themselves, or
Yeah.
things like that, where it's like there's a very codependent thing that's happening.
Yeah.
It's not that they're out to try to hurt their child, they're
Hmm.
just not understanding what they're doing, and that's something they need to, fill in themselves. So I
Yeah.
do describe that a lot to people that way too. And there certainly is people who just actively are, they just want everybody's energy, and they know that's a thing
Yes.
too.
Yes.
But I would say the majority of people probably are not like that, not
Yeah.
malicious anyway. And
Yeah.
this idea of being able to learn how to take care of yourself, how to understand your own energy, how much that can be helpful. So either you're not an energy vampire yourself, or you are not being a victim all the time of
Yeah.
this, where you understand that you absolutely have control over how all of this works. But like you
Yeah.
said earlier when we were talking about cords, there are some people, regardless of how many good boundaries you have up, that you're always going to have a harder time with a boundary. Usually I feel like family, the people you're closest to.
Yes.
It's kind of interesting because there's really not a clear cut like, oh, this person is bad, they're an energy vampire. It's really like, why are they doing what they're doing, and
Yeah.
are you on the receiving end? You don't have to be. Are
Yeah.
you the one doing this? Are you realizing this? How do you, heal yourself so you are also able to cut the cord on your side? It's kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
this whole
Well,
rabbit
and
hole.
I think a lot of people don't recognize that we're not victims.
Hmm.
Like we are creating the energy, we're creating everything that's happening in our lives. We're creating the response that we're having to everything that's happening in our lives. We don't necessarily make every situation that's in our lives happen,
Hmm.
but we're definitely creating our response, and we're creating what happens after something happens. And so with all of these patterns, with the chords that we're throwing, we're also creating the space for people to overly use our energy or to take that energy and not give it back. Like we're creating that environment. So sometimes when we're not setting a boundary, when we're in relationship and we're throwing cords to people, sometimes it's because we need to feel needed.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's because we have another thing that we need to heal on our end first before we can set appropriate boundaries, before we can say, okay, it's not okay for everybody else to receive from me
Mm-hmm.
and for me to stand here depleted. And so I think a lot of the time when we have these cords that are attached, there's other healing stuff that goes along with that. So you can cut the cords, but the underlying issue is still there. And that's something that a lot of people don't look at. They'll just go through and they'll cut their cords. And I think it's really important for people to do their work, for people to stand in, okay, I did this. I responded this way. I'm taking responsibility for my part of this. So every situation that happens, there's something in that that we're responsible for. And recognizing that so that we can heal our piece of it is one of the most important things moving forward in your own healing so that you're not willy-nilly throwing cords out to everybody and just giving your energy away.
Mm-hmm. Which very much describes how I spent a large chunk of my life. That's why it was so mind blowing when it was like, wait a minute, I get to say how this all works. Like, I don't have to allow this to happen.
Yeah.
And it's not like they think any of us really master this, where
Oh
we're
no.
just like all the time we just know how to master our own energy and not to
Oh hell no.
be an energy vampire or be giving our energy away or whatever. But it is, I think, like a continuous work in progress and learning and just, like you said, being aware of kind of what's happening in order to be able to do something about it. So if you encounter in your work someone who has a lot of these cords or is now then connected to an energy vampire, how do you generally address that? I mean, I know there's
Um,
cord cutting, but
yeah. So I'll usually do the cord cutting. After I'm done working with them, I'll talk to them about, okay, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing this pattern in your body. Like you have all of these cords that have been thrown out, so many of them, like I can usually tell if it's a trauma pattern by the way that it's wound into the system. I can usually tell like how long that cord has been there, because the deeper the roots and the more intertwined with other cords in the body, usually that's telling me that it's been there for a longer period of time. Um, so I can walk them through and say, okay, these are the things that I'm seeing so that they can start thinking about the relationships. And then if there's specific things that come up for them, if there's specific people that come up for them, I'll ask them to look at, okay, what is the relationship that you have with this person? What pieces of this are unhealthy on your side?
mm-hmm.
Like, where are you allowing other people to take advantage of your energy? Where are you allowing yourself to not keep the boundaries that you wish to keep? Where are you allowing yourself to? And I'll ask a series of questions about how they're interacting in these relationships. And oftentimes when we start seeing that there's a lot of cords that have been thrown that are wrapped up in unhealthy patterns, there is a some people have a sense of shame around that. Some people have a sense
Okay.
of, oh my gosh, what did I do? Why did I let this happen? And so it's looking at, okay, now you're responding with this shame response. Now you're responding with this emotion and looking at how those emotions are tied into the cord because it's usually mirroring something back for you. If you have an unhealthy pattern or an unhealthy boundary, the person that you have this unhealthy pattern or boundary with, chances are you're displaying some of the same characteristics. And that's why it's hard for you to set a boundary in the first place. Like they're mirroring something back to you for
Mm-hmm.
you to work on and heal. Um, that in my experience, that's how this world works. Like we have these things happen in our lives to show us something about ourselves so that we can heal and we can work on the patterns and come back to the wholeness that we came from. I mean, we're all whole at all times, but our human perception is that we're not. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's healing the perception that we have so that we feel like we're in that whole space all the time.
So I I do understand how you're explaining things, and this idea of our own responsibility to ourselves to acknowledge and try to work through some of these things. When you think of it in the context of someone who is very traumatized, say by abuse,
Mhm.
how do you explain or differentiate between the idea of like victim blaming, or someone who
Yep.
is saying like, oh my god, it's my fault I was abused,
Yes.
versus like the responsibility of trying to help yourself,
Yeah.
feel better and heal from some of this stuff? Like,
Yep.
how do you differentiate?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot for myself because there have been things in my past that have happened, and I've had people essentially victim shame me on things. And when I started looking at like the wholeness and us creating our own environments, I went through this whole stage of blaming myself. Oh gosh, I did this. I created this.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've found is that the responsibility piece, the piece of I need to take responsibility, this is not taking responsibility for the wholeness of the event that happened. It's recognizing that responsibility is my ability to respond.
Mm-hmm.
So it is my response to what has happened to me, what I do
So
after
it's like taking
said thing
back your
happens.
power. So
Yes,
instead of the
exactly.
power being with this traumatic event or the person who
Yes.
created the traumatic event, you're saying this is what I can control,
Yes.
and this is how I'm going to respond for myself. Does
Exactly.
that sound
Exactly.
right? Okay.
And so, like, a huge part of that response is how are you taking care of yourself afterwards? So, there's going to be a period of time that a lot of people go into a very toxic, depressive state. This happened to me. I'm trying to deal with this. I'm trying to recognize what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all part of the healing process. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there is nothing wrong with anything
Mm-mm.
like that we're doing to try to deal with our traumas. Like everybody goes through a process so that they can learn and heal and grow from it. So the way that you respond is the way that you respond. However, like if you continue to stay in a space of stagnation and you continue to choose to stay in that space rather than choosing the next step to help yourself heal, there's a difference there.
Mm-hmm.
Like your responsibility is in being able to respond to the keys that your body is giving you. Like our bodies will tell us if you're crying all the time, if your body is in pain, if you feel like crap, that is your body's way of saying, "Hey, we need to do something different." Like I don't want you to feel this way, but I need to get your attention. So your body's going to say, "Hey, like I'm giving you this huge amount of pain to give you a reason to move forward."
Mm-hmm.
So it's recognizing and responding to the way that your body is responding emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, um, and then moving forward from that. And that is part of the healing process with cord cutting. Like you're cutting the cords, but you're also responding to like the trauma that's coming up for you, the reason why the cords are there, and responding and taking different action so that that does not happen again.
Mm-hmm.
So setting the boundaries, choosing to respond differently than you have in the past, choosing to recognize things have happened to you, but you don't need to stay in that space of victimhood because once you say I'm a victim of something, you are, a lot of people put the I am statement out there. I am a victim. That's calling in that energy from the universe, saying, I have had this happen in my life. That's understanding that this is what's happened in your life, but you are not a victim. Like that's not the energy you need to carry going forward. Like the energy is, I am powerful and I am choosing differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like so that you can create something new in your life. Um, a lot of the time I do talk to people who've been who've had sexual trauma or physical trauma, and I'll talk to them about that I am statement, specifically the I am a victim statement, because it is keeping you stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's making you stand in a place of being weak and powerless. And a lot of people shame themselves on that because they're like, I am a victim. This is who I am. I couldn't take care of myself. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. And a lot of the time, it's not about the person who did whatever they did. Like, it's not about being a victim of that situation or whatever. It's about, I wasn't strong enough to do this. And so it's like this huge boundary of like shaming themselves and creating an environment where they're not powerful.
Mm-hmm.
They don't feel powerful, so they're saying that they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's allowing people space to respond differently, choose different words, and put themselves back in a powerful state. I'm not saying crappy things didn't happen,
Right.
but going forward, take your power back.
So it's like the healing place, like the healing phase of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I mean, having some people in my life that I'm very close with that have been through some very traumatic things throughout their life,
Yeah.
and kind of watching the process of them trying to dissect it, my personal feeling is there is a point in time where it is perfectly good for you to say I am a victim, because a lot of times in the
Yes.
very beginning of it, especially if it's abuse from a parent, a
Yes.
lot of children take on that responsibility themselves because they were told over and over again that it was their fault they were getting abused.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
do think there's a point in time where getting to that point where you can say, this is not my fault that this happened to
Yes.
me, is hugely important. But what I'm
Yes.
hearing you say is like staying in that part
Yes.
where you don't ever move past the idea where you've accepted this was not my fault. I didn't
Yes.
ask for this to happen to me. This happened to me because of, things outside my realm of control.
Yeah.
I was a child, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Saying like, absolutely something happened to me that wasn't right.
Yes.
But then instead of just sitting there for the rest of your life and not
Mhm.
moving past that, you're kind of talking about that phase where you've accepted this
Yeah.
thing happened to you. It wasn't your fault. But
Yeah.
now what do I do with that information?
Yeah.
Like, how do I
Yeah.
feel better? you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
still acknowledge that, yeah, like you said earlier, I mean, depression, unfortunately, suicidal ideation, a lot of things come up for people who have to go through stuff like that, because it is not an easy process to go through. But it does, like you said, doesn't feel good to be sitting in that place forever. Well, you can certainly understand, acknowledge, and accept
Yeah.
that people are going to be in that phase sometimes because,
Yep.
crappy things happen to
Yes.
people, unfortunately. Or sometimes, there's even genetic factors of why sometimes people, or, other environmental factors of why sometimes people are challenged with certain things more so than someone else who might have gone through the same situation. That being said, honoring that, yes, there's different phases of that. It's kind of like what you said when you acknowledge that your body's trying to tell you, yeah, this doesn't feel good and we really don't want to stay here forever. Because I don't really know anybody who is in that space that wants to stay there,
No.
People are
No.
desperate to get out of it. Sometimes
Yes.
turning towards things that are unhealthy,
Yep.
sometimes doing things that are healthy, choosing therapy or other methods. But yeah, there's a point where, I guess even from like personal experience, there's a point where it gets old. It
Yep.
gets old. You get tired of feeling a certain way. Like for me personally, and it's kind of interesting because there was a lot of energy around all of this. I know we had kind of talked before we started recording about if you start
Mhm.
yawning, a lot of times it
Yep.
means there's a lot of energy. For me, it's
Yeah.
like coughing.
Yep.
I
Yep.
do a lot of stuff like that. So I'm not just perpetually sick. It's just stuff that just happens. But anyway, where was I going with that? We were talking about, oh, from personal experience, my coping mechanism that I started presenting with as a child was eating. And, ended up eventually being a very unhealthy dynamic with feeding myself where it wasn't pleasurable in it wasn't I wasn't enjoying myself. It was like a drug. It was something totally different that didn't feel good and often sent me into a shame spiral. I've had eating disorder. There was a lot of things that happened because of that. And I lived that way for a long time. And the funny thing is, I would never describe myself as a person who doesn't like myself physically. I always think that I look good. And that's not being like, prideful or weird. I that's never been what any of this has been about. It's never been like, oh, I want to fit into this certain clothing or whatever. Personally, I just got to a point where it was like, I am so tired of this cycle. I am so tired of like literally shoving all the things back down inside of me with food. How do I do something about this? So
Yeah.
at that point, I think is when I started to do like a lot more healing work and things that were happening that were a lot more profound, because I didn't want to sit there and feel powerless to this anymore.
Yeah.
But it took a minute for me to get there. Like I had to even understand what was happening in the first place. And I certainly feel like there's a lot of other people who will absolutely understand all of that.
Yeah.
And we all choose our ways to cope, but sometimes those coping things are not helpful or healthy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool that there is such a thing out there, is being able to understand and acknowledge, wait a minute, this is my power. Like my energy is mine. And I can do what I want with it. I can share it with who I want. Even like in school, we were taught, different ways of like grounding and centering ourselves, and this idea of protecting yourself when you go into a session with someone. Not because that person is going to actively take anything from you, but because a lot of times caregivers tend to give a lot of their own personal energy, not understanding that they don't need to do that. Like they can have endless amounts of energy that they can use for the session and not feel depleted afterwards. Was just like mind-blowing for me. But this idea of being able to protect yourself also, where you are actually saying like, I'm gonna allow myself to give and receive just the good. I'm not gonna allow anything to be taken from me that doesn't need to be taken. This session's gonna be utilizing everything around me to help this person. And it seems so simple, but it's really very profound at the same time, especially people who have gone through stuff in their lives, which, if I'm being honest, I don't know anybody who doesn't have something.
No, Lord knows I'm a shit show sometimes.
Right.
Like, I mean, I'll be completely honest. Sometimes I play a good game and everybody thinks that I have my crap together, but on the inside, I'm like, I need to take care of my stuff just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And like, I talk about all these things. Like, I work with my clients on these things. We do all of these things, but I've been through a lot of trauma in my life too. I've had a lot of things happen, and I talk about things because I am on the other side of a lot of those. Like, I have called myself a victim. I have done a lot of these unhealthy things. And I think it's important to acknowledge, like, I'm where I am because I have done a lot of the work. I still have a ton of work to do. Yeah. Like, I don't think any of us ever stops having to deal with our junk. Like, right. There's always things that come up. Like, even if you work through it, it might come up again. Like, we have patterns. We have, like, our body responds to things. And, like, it comes up. And we just continue to choose to move forward again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like we would retrain our bodies. People go to like physical therapy because something's not working right. Your body's been doing this thing for a long time, oftentimes, and something went awry. Yeah. And then your physical therapist is like, oh, so here's what you're doing, and here's how we retrain your body to function better. I feel like it's the same type of thing with
Yeah.
our own personal work and energy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting concept going back to this idea of energy vampire. So, do you think that most of us have been on the giving and receiving end of being an energy vampire at some point?
Um,
I kind of feel like it's a thing.
I think a fair number of us have.
I
I
mean, I
think
feel
there's
like
probably
teenagers are
flukes.
very much energy vampires. I can say that because I was one and I have one.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
she's amazing, but also sometimes I'm like, kid, this
yeah.
whole world does not revolve around you.
Well, and I think there are probably times where we're dealing with our junk and we just don't know where to turn to.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it is easier to go to somebody else and be like, I need something. I need something. So I think sometimes we get to a point where we kind of grasp at straws. And it's like we need to get energy from somewhere, and that's just where we go. Like sometimes
Mm-hmm.
the relationships that we have around us, there is give and take. Like, and I don't mean to say take like in a bad way, because it's not
No.
always in a bad way. Sometimes it's just giving and receiving. And sometimes we need to receive more than we're giving.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's part of being human.
This kind of reminds me a lot of like this social media dynamic thing where like millennials and Gen Z are struggling with this idea of feeling okay within themselves because they constantly were looking for that external validation.
Yeah.
And it's funny because a lot of times, people who might be doing that thing online where you can see that they need someone to tell them something, like the little
Mhm.
coy like, "Oh, I'm so ugly today," but you clearly like took that
Yeah.
picture 20 times to get the
Yeah.
right version of,
Yeah.
disheveled. Um
Yeah.
Sometimes those people can identify other people that are doing it, but not necessarily themselves. Or
Yeah.
sometimes they can identify that they're doing it, but they just don't know how to stop because they don't
Yeah.
know how to give themselves that same
Yeah.
reaction. And
Yeah.
it's kind of sad. I'm personally happy that I had one foot solidly in the analog era for the first part of my life. In the digital
Yeah.
era, I don't have any issue with either of them as a
Yeah.
whole. Um, but I mean, that's got to be hard to be someone who needs to utilize that in order to feel better about themselves
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's only so much of a fix you can get from that before you
Yeah.
have to keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, and this is bringing up for me that it's not necessarily just people that we send cords to. We also send cords to situations.
Interesting.
And at times things. We are putting our energy, like where we're putting our focus is also where we're putting our energy. So we're sending our energy to
Mm,
specific things. So, like specifically the social media stuff, a lot of the time people are sending this energetic cord to social media and specific responses and like what they're receiving from that.
mm-hmm.
Um, there's a cord there, and so sometimes the work
Okay.
that I end up doing with people is cutting the cords of addiction, whether it's to the internet, whether it's to any type of social media, whether it's to drugs or alcohol. Sometimes it's cutting those cords. Um, or old belief patterns. We have cords that can be tied to old belief patterns or old situations.
Mm-hmm.
So, dealing with the trauma aspect, sometimes people have this cord that goes to specific types of trauma, and they'll keep drawing that specific type of trauma back in because there's something in that energy that's drawing them. It feels comfortable to them, it feels normal to them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're keeping that cord open and cutting those cords of old traumas and old belief patterns and addictions or different situations or things can be just as important as cutting cords in relationships, because again, it's where you're focusing your energy, you're putting your attention on it and sending energy to it.
So, do you find that you come across people who are very resistant to cutting a cord? Like you find the cord and they're just not ready to acknowledge
Yep.
it, or it just hurts
Yeah.
too much?
So I will ask their higher self before I do anything, can we work on this cord today?
Okay.
And if their higher self gives me permission to work on the cord, I will check in with the physical body. And if I'm getting resistance, I'll ask the person on the table, hey, I am I'm seeing this cord. There's a lot of resistance to releasing this. This is the information that's coming through. Because a lot of the time I will get situational information like this is a cord with your brother, like there's some type of trauma there. Like, do you want to take care of this or are you comfortable with this being here?
Mm-hmm.
And there are times that people are like, nope, leave it alone.
Okay.
Leave it
I mean,
alone.
that's a really respectful way to handle it, though,
Yep.
because legitimately, sometimes you're just not ready to see it.
Yep.
You
Yep.
you
And
can be
it,
presented to you, but you're not
mhm.
willing to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it can be painful to remove for people because you
Mm-hmm.
have so much physicality tied up into it. Like it's a space in your body that's being taken up with this cord. It's like you have this thing attached to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've had it there for years and years and years, like plucking that cord out of there, because sometimes we'll actually pull the roots out. We won't just cauterize it. We'll pull the roots out and try to get every little piece of it out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people will have physical sensations that go along with that. Like the second that I start touching it, they're like, what are you pulling on? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that actually brings up my own personal experience with a cord that you've worked on for me that
Mm-hmm.
was connected to my digestive system, which totally makes sense with everything I was already explaining.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I was really kind of surprised at how much physical, um, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like feeling, that I
Yeah.
got from what you were doing, not only while you were doing it, like you weren't actively like massaging tissue, nothing like that. You were just working on that cord, and I could feel it in my body, and
Yeah.
I could feel it afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't feel bad, but I think that was just the phase that I was at where
Yeah.
I was ready to let that one. I was ready to let you do whatever you needed to do with it. But yeah, for a while afterwards, or I would sometimes like feel like a little bit of pressure or
Mm-hmm.
soreness there, or sometimes even like my digestive system felt like it was moving through there, where I was like, maybe it was stuck before. It was super interesting. I thought it was all
Yeah.
very fascinating. But yeah, it's interesting to think that these cords can actually like affect your physical body too.
Mhm.
And I imagine if you would have tried that like 10 years ago, it might not have been something that I would have been okay with.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
but maybe. Um, but it is the first time, I think. I mean, we talked about that before. It was the first time I experienced anyone describing something like that to me.
Yeah.
So perhaps
Yeah.
someone had done something that with like that with me before, and I just didn't know that's what they were doing because
Yeah.
had energy work and stuff before. But I know what you do is a little bit different than
Yeah.
just energy work.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was kind of a cool experience.
Yeah.
But I imagine there's times where it's like putting your hand in an open wound and the person's like, ouch, don't touch that
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think about when I started dating my fiance, like I was doing my typical normal cord cutting and I was having one of those moments where I was like having whatever breakdown I was having emotionally and I was like, "You know what? I don't want him feeling any part of this." So I started like cutting all my cords and like he didn't know about my cord cutting practices at that point. Like we talk about a lot of things, but that was one thing that I hadn't like explained to him that I go through and I cut these cords. And him and I are very energetically connected. And I cut the cord and like he texted me like a few minutes later and was like, "Are you okay? Like my heart hurts. Like what is going
Oh,
on?" Like he had a very physical sensation from that because I cut my side of the cord. And so there was not this energy back and forth anymore and it was like, what is happening? And
wow.
so I was like, oh crap. Like I should have talked to you about this cuz like it didn't even occur to me how it was going to affect him. And I mean, this is stuff that I do all the time, but it did not occur to me like that he would feel it, one.
Yeah, that's
And
interesting.
but it was because we were so energetically tied. We were so energetically connected and sending so much energy back and forth that it was a huge difference. And like he could feel that like I was doing it out of me being in a space of trauma and like not wanting to be connected and have him feel that. And so he felt it very, very strongly. Like immediately he texted me. It was literally within a few minutes
Wow.
he texted me and was like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And so I had to explain to him, oh, I was cutting cords, like whatever. And he's like, okay, tell me more about this because I need to understand, like, so
Hmm.
that I know going forward. Um, and it was one of those things where I just needed to be more, I needed to recognize like how connected we are energetically in
Hmm.
that space. Um, so that I could be um respectful of that energy flow too.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me actually of when you moved out of state.
Mm.
And I think I wonder if it was something like that because I remember I was talking to you, and I know like when you moved, it was just there was a lot of stuff happening in your life, a lot of big things. But I
Mhm.
remember one day sitting there and going, "Man, I can really tell that she's gone. Like I don't feel her here, even because I mean, I guess I was just used to always feeling the connection or whatever. So it must have been something like that, which is understandable because you had a lot of stuff going on. And now that you explain this idea of like not wanting to also like send all of your stuff through the cord
Mhm. Yeah.
and put that on someone else accidentally
Yeah.
is kind of an interesting way to put it. That's kind of, I mean, I've never thought about it that way before, but that's kind of a cool way to think about it too, being able to kind of respectfully still have a relationship with someone, a connection with somebody, but understand that you're going through a lot of stuff that you don't want to accidentally put on other people.
Yep. Yeah.
That's kind of a cool thought. So, is there anything specific that you do when you're working on this yourself? Is there anything that we could tell other people how to maybe understand, recognize, or do a little of their own maintenance on this kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I used to do every morning I would clear cords or every night. Like it was at least once a day I used to clear everything. Partly because I was working on so many clients
Mm-hmm.
that I was seeing a lot of people and I didn't want to drag anything that was sitting in my system or that I was um, pulling through a cord, or if somebody was drawing energy from me because I didn't set a clear boundary, like I didn't want to carry any of that with me into the next session or into my relationships. So I would go through and do the process that I was talking about earlier with either the kyanite or the selenite.
Okay.
I would do that process every day. Like it was just a
So,
clean, simple way.
we should probably put in the notes what those two stones are if people want to be able to
Yep.
use them for themselves.
Yep. I wish I had my kyanite
How do you
here.
spell that? I mean, I know selenite well, but I've never heard
Yeah,
of kyanite.
it's Kyanite.
I'm gonna have to look that one
Um,
up.
there's either black or blue. There might be another one too, but black and blue are the ones that I typically use. The black one is specifically for very low vibrational aspects of things. So the things that you would consider darker energies or really, really bad trauma,
Okay.
things that are a little bit more I'm not sure the word I want to use, but like more serious, I guess, more negative. The blue kyanite is just a typical, like anything that you just want to cut, just cut it. Like it'll cut through it, but the really dark stuff or
It's your
things that are really
all-purpose knife.
traumatic. Yes, yes. Um, so I would just go through and use that once a day and clear my cords that way. And then again, visualizing like everything being sealed up, everything being cleared out, like any energies that you don't want to sit with you, those being cleared from the system. Again, being very, very intentional about that. If you have somebody in your life that you recognize you have some trauma patterns with, or you have a lot of drama around, like you can intentionally send back that energy in a loving manner. Say I'm cutting this cord in the most loving way possible, like holding your own loving space. Like you never want to do anything with malicious intent. Like you never want to go, I'm cutting you off. And I mean, like you want it to be loving because it is something that is attached to your own body. And so
So it's
like
like
sending,
cutting off your own arm. Your
yeah, so sending hatred back to a person is never cool. Like
mm-hmm.
I mean, you might hate that person, but don't send the hatred back. Like just be like, you know what? I'm lovingly cutting this off. Like holding that energetic vibration is going to help you heal faster.
I was gonna say
It
it feels
is,
like a very compassionate thing for yourself. And you just
yes.
like the idea of forgiveness and stuff like that. You do it
Hmm.
really for yourself.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
don't have to carry that with you anymore. That makes sense.
Yeah. And the energy that you're sending back to that person is also holding love for them so that they can begin to heal. So if
Mm-hmm.
there is something like if you have somebody who's drawing that energy from you, it's because there is something that needs to be healed for them as well. Like it's two-sided. Like there's healing on both sides of this. But so just continuing to maintain that energetic space for you and the other person is going to help in the overall situation, especially if it's somebody that you're keeping a relationship with. Um, you want to make sure that you're doing everything in a loving manner.
I could see
Um,
this being very helpful for people who work in environments that where they're very challenged by people around them. That happens all the time, and you can't necessarily quit your
yes,
job. You know, and sometimes it's
yes,
coming from a higher up or whatever. You can't necessarily end the relationship, but finding ways to be able to
yes,
lovingly work through it is probably
yeah,
very helpful.
yeah, yeah. So just maintaining your own sense of self-love and love for other people through the whole process is an awesome way to do it. I've actually had some of my clients that would picture like this giant rainbow beam of light, and it was like a lightsaber, but it was like a
Oh,
love saber.
that's
And so they would
awesome.
like love it off. Like it was
I love
like
that.
it's beautiful because sometimes they would do that in sessions
I'm
with
writing
me.
down
Like
rainbow lightsaber.
yes. Yes. And so they would actually do that with me in a session, and it was just this beautiful radiant light that they were using to cut through the energy. And it was almost like if you were to step into the sunshine, like you're in the shadows and then you step into the sunshine and how everything just glows. That was like the energy that they were putting forth and cutting off
Oh,
of these. So it was like these cords had like all these weird windy parts or whatever. And they would just like shine this beautiful light on it. And it was like, okay, we're just gonna like dissolve it away, like laser cut it away. And it was how they chose to do it
mm-hmm.
to maintain that energy of love. And like that was like one of the most beautiful ways that I could
It
see people
sounds like
doing
it.
it. And like when I work with people, different ways of doing it come through based on the energy of the person who's on the table. So sometimes like I will totally use a battle axe to cut those things off in the most loving way possible. But there are other times that we are just using like just slowly scraping things away and like doing it in a very gentle way. It just depends on how the person is feeling. If it's something that they're very vulnerable about the relationship, if they have any sense of shame or victimhood or things like that in that specific chord, sometimes you need to do it in a more gentle way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's listening to yourself and listening to the guidance that you're receiving, regardless of if you think that you're an intuitive or you're psychic or you're whatever, we all get this little inner voice
Mm-hmm.
that says, I might be making this crap up, but this is what I feel called to do. Like we all have that. We just
We have
need
to
to
be
listen.
quiet. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And
Shush your mouth.
meditation,
Yes.
thinking about things in meditation, I feel like that is such a hard practice for people to do consistently, even though I feel like pretty much everybody knows about meditation now. And some people that comes in the form of prayer, which can also be very
Yep.
meditative.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing to me is how much scientific backing there is behind meditation and even prayer too.
Yeah.
That this idea of taking that time to sit quietly with yourself, allow yourself to process things, or, if it's in the form of prayer, allow yourself to talk things out, how it actually will create new neural pathways, which I think is
Yep.
super cool to think about that. Like, you can literally change your brain by allowing yourself to do that. And when you
Yeah.
think of stuff like this, like how powerful that would be to take this little bit of quiet time to sit with yourself, figure out what it is that you need,
Hmm.
and then act on it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to make some kind of major impact in your life and your relationships.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it might not always be easy, I would think, especially if it was a relationship that you were struggling with because you don't necessarily want to let it go,
Yeah.
or some type of pattern that you're struggling with, or something like that. But
Yep.
how rewarding it is probably on the other side of that
Yeah.
to be able
Yeah.
to take that off you.
Yeah. Well, and I will just say, like, last little bit of tidbit of information. Um, if you feel like you don't hear that little voice and you don't know what's going on in your body, and you tap in and you try to imagine where these chords are, and you're just like, I got nothing. Like, I don't get it. It's not coming to me. I see nothing. I feel nothing, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You can still maintain a practice. You can still ask your higher self or ask your guides or just ask whoever you want to ask. I don't care who you ask, whoever you believe in, whatever you want, ask that that energy comes in, and that anything that's no longer serving you, we're clearing that away. Like, we're clearing that away in the most loving way possible. And we're shifting to a new pattern. Like, we're
Mm-hmm.
shifting to more healthful chords. And like, that's all you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm asking that whatever is not serving me, I'm just going to clear that away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm starting this process now.
Well, and just for clarity for everyone too, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are not, like, in case of long-term relationship, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're just giving up a relationship. There's going to be
No.
challenges in all types of relationships. It doesn't mean like, oh, sorry, you no longer serve me. Bye.
Yeah.
Like, not like that. That's
Yeah.
not the message that we're bringing forth. Like, there's a lot of things that are hard work but are worth it.
Yep.
More just being aware of what you need. And also, I feel like sometimes when you do those type of practices, you can better communicate to the other person what it is you feel like you understand you need, and
Yep.
let them be able to take some active role in this too. Because, a
Yeah.
lot of times just conversations like that will start something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it's certainly not like, go divorce your spouse or whatever
No.
because they pissed you off
No.
this morning.
Yeah. No, it's more, it's
But,
just
just for
letting
clarity, like,
go.
this is a much deeper
Yeah.
thing than that.
Yeah. It's just letting go of the things that um are troublesome for you, letting go of the low vibrational, the perceived negative emotions, the old patterns that aren't helping you grow.
Mm-hmm.
It's letting go of the things that you have control over.
Mm-hmm.
It's letting go of the pieces of yourself that are hanging on to the past.
Yes.
It's like, I don't need to hang on to this energy anymore. And I can choose to have different energy in this relationship.
Mm-hmm. And, interpreting that into, layman's terms, I can choose how I respond.
Mhm.
That is the one thing we have control over, is how we respond. I've said that to family members a lot over the years, because sometimes Which I will preface this with, it's always easier to identify this pattern in other people than yourself. But
Hmm.
people who have had consistently these struggles where they just keep trying the same thing and
Yeah.
involving a relationship or whatever, and they're consistently getting the same results, and like, no, but this person needs to understand, they need to do this, they need to do that, and you try to lovingly say, well, you can't control what they do, but you can control what you do. And
Yeah.
eventually, just like I've said this several times, like, okay, so if you keep running into a brick wall, do you look stupid or the brick wall? And they're like, well, I look stupid. I'm like, okay, do you understand what's happening now? Which,
Yeah.
again, is easier to identify in other people than yourself. But how great is that when you're like, I'm not going to run into that brick wall anymore. I'm doing
Yeah.
something different because now all of a sudden you feel better, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it might not have changed their dynamic, but you are doing better. And,
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
woo side of things, your energy is better and
Yeah.
your cords are healthier or disconnected if they need to be. It's a
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
good thing all the way around.
Yeah. Tammy, I just love that you're like, I'm going to explain this in layman's terms. And I'm going, I thought I was doing that.
I'm not saying that people don't understand that,
It just cracks me
but
up
I
because
know
this
you've
is why
lived
we're
in this
doing this
realm for
together.
so long.
Because I totally thought I was like bringing it down to like
I
the
am the
normal
eternal
level.
mediator. I'm like, let's explain things in different languages.
I appreciate that so much because I'm like, okay, I guess I did say perceived negative and I did say a couple other things. So
Not saying
I
it doesn't
I
make
love
sense to
that.
tons of
Yes.
people, but I feel like sometimes even just getting back to the basics of
Yeah.
this is a big thing to absorb sometimes, because there's probably
Yes.
people listening to this or watching this that are like, wow, I can think of a lot of things that I might need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And breaking it down into its simplest form,
Yes. Yes.
so it's like, it's just as simple as controlling what you can control, which is your own reactions, your own energy, your own response,
Yeah.
is literally the only thing we can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it makes a difference.
Yes, it does. I am
That is
so stinking grateful for us working together on this because
absolutely.
I think it will really help more people to understand.
Hmm.
And that's all I want. I
And I
just want
hope,
people to understand.
yeah, and I hope people find it accessible,
Yep.
because obviously there's going to be people who listen to this that are very much already understanding all of this, and maybe way more than I possibly know. But there's going to be people who maybe are listening to it that are just curious and don't necessarily live in that woo space.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're like, what are these people talking about? But that's the thing is, I know we both want everyone to be able to interact with us and kind of feel comfortable navigating these spaces that we live in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it was another excellent conversation.
True
And
story.
I'm really looking forward to, I know we've got some good people lined up that we're
Yep.
just trying to work out some scheduling so we can talk with them a little bit more. But I'm very excited for the interviews that are going to be coming up. So, of course, we'll keep people posted about that too.
Perfect. Thank y'all for listening.
Yes,
Excited to talk to you next week.
of course. See you later.
Thanks everybody for listening. If you liked what you heard today, please subscribe and check the show description for the links to the show. We would love to hear your thoughts below on this episode, as well as anything that you'd like us to talk about on future episodes. Remember, everybody, you are unique just the way you are, and that is why they call us Woo.
Mm-hmm.